listened to it before.
I hadn't until I saw it in the agenda, no.
It's on Spotify, because it's a Gimlet Media, but you can also I think you can just listen to the episodes from the internet. I don't think you need, because I saw that if you visit the internet, they have the play button on different episodes. So it's not strictly through an app. I know it's not on the podcast app on Apple because whatever, it's not. But I started listening to it and just have been binging it. And one of the things that they said that was really interesting was, and this is, I'll try to keep this brief, but essentially the moral of the story was that it's very the way for us to make more progress with climate change. And this is focusing specifically on climate change, but environmentalism in general, is to talk about it, because it's kind of through communication of getting almost like something to go viral, oh, I'm doing this, and then it gets more traction rather than just one sole person doing something independently. And they said the problem is because it's become such a partisan or taboo topic, that people are so hesitant to bring something up about climate change because they think, oh, I don't know whether there's that person's a climate denier. And so it's almost become, one of those religion, politics, and, money that you're not supposed to talk about. And they said that actually the percentage of people who are really confirmed hard line climate deniers are actually a lot smaller than maybe people assume. So, your chances are that if you're going to be talking to somebody, and obviously, I guess you have to know your audience, but that there's a gap between the perception of how many people are climate deniers when they poll people and what they actually are in reality. Some people are just, could care less, but somebody who's actually firmly, I think that there's no such thing as climate change, or I don't want to do anything about it, was a lot smaller than people's perception. So I thought that was really interesting. And to your point, you can't talk about it because it's climate change and you don't know how someone's going to, take to it being discussed. So anyway, I thought that was interesting. That's
yeah, it is really interesting. And I think it's really important to push past that, right? These things really have to be talked about. And you're right, most people, when I was in college, I did a final project paper on this book that I forget the name of at the time, but this is the early 2000s, and no, 1990, somewhere in there, around 2000. And it was a book about a climate, global warming. At the time it was called global warming, right? Denial, science book. And I just went through and sort of picked out all the science, said, well, this isn't accurate because of this, and this isn't accurate because of that. And it's come a long way since then. I think, most people will say that, oh, there's nothing we can do about it, or it's just the way it is. But not a lot of people, to your point, are really denying the fact that this is happening. You watch the news and there's fires and there's just terrible, it's affecting everyone all over the world. I think us in the Northeast, we're one of the few places where we get affected less.
Right.
And the more it's discussed, the less it is allowed to fall into one of these little partisan pigeonholes. Because there's just too many things that people aren't supposed to talk about anymore. And this obviously a big enough topic and important enough to everyone on the planet that can't let it happen. And that's far bigger than us, but just generally speaking.
It was one of the other episodes was interesting because it was about regenerative farming, but it was telling the story from two different farm types. One that was really, I think I want to say it was in Massachusetts or Vermont, was very upstate New York, I think. Crunchy, green, doing everything very, very what you would consider regenerative, sustainable farming. And then the other one was just a straight out soybean farmer in, I want to say Wisconsin. And he was saying look, I'm not doing this for, ultimately his rationale for doing farming a different way was basically cost. And he found that this was no-till farming is what he started. And I mean, the kind of the repercussions in a positive way it was like a snowball effect where all of a sudden he had to spend a lot less money on fertilizer and on pesticides and herbicides and all this. And he's like, all I'm doing is saving money, and my cost per bushel is so much, like my expense per bushel is so much lower. He's like, I'm not out here, you know, having to like tell everybody how wonderful this is because it's saving the planet. All I'm doing is like doing
Right.
things in a way that I spend way less time, and I spend way less money and produce, you know, the same amount as an equivalent farmer. So it's just interesting how, like, if you get at something in more of a way that somebody, you know, isn't like banging them over the head with, you know, you should do this differently because I know better, and it's just like, hey, this makes more sense. Just
Right.
logically, you have to. What he found most difficult was just pushing, like just changing the way people did things. Like it wasn't a matter of, you know, if at the end of the day it was bottom line is more advantageous to do it this way, it was just because you have, you know, like multiple generations of people that were, you know, you buy this, you buy the pesticides, you buy the herbicides, you buy the fertilizer, like why do anything differently? It kind of rocks the boat. And, you know, that was the biggest hurdle, not like he, you know, he wasn't out there saying, you guys should be doing this for the climate.
Mhm.
Anyway, sorry, I should call this meeting to order. I'm sorry, I went on a little tangent. Anyways,
Very
so check
relevant.
it out. It's
Very
really,
relevant.
really,
Order.
really, really good. Okay, so I'm going to call to order the Sustainability Committee Zoom special meeting of January 11th, 2022 at 6 p.m. Alexis Khan present.
Craig Fasulo present.
Pat Turner present.
Tula Balistrassi.
Great. Okay, thank you. So then the next thing, if you don't mind, I'll bring up the meeting minutes. I know some of them are very old. I apologize. I thought I had already covered these and I didn't. Did anybody have any comments or changes on the minutes that I sent out? I'll pull them up, but I just wasn't sure if anybody had any comments.
I did actually look this morning. No comments.
Yeah, I looked them over. They look good.
Okay, so should I just motion to approve?
Do you have, for the minutes here, do you have the dates of those meeting minutes we're discussing?
Mhm.
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay.
Sorry. Go ahead, Pat.
September 26th, November 9th, December 14th.
Okay. Okay, so there are 3 sets of minutes?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it was, I think it was October 26th.
October 26th, November 9th, and December 14th.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. Did we approve it? Sorry, I forgot whether someone said.
Seconded.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I forgot. Alrighty. Awesome. Okay,
No.
so then the next thing I just thought I would give you an update on is we did get word that, and in all honesty, I didn't get into it too deeply, but can you see my screen? Does it say climate leader designation?
mm, No, you don't have your screen up.
Okay, sorry about that. Do you see it now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So as you may recall in a prior meeting, there's this new climate leader designation that they were going to pilot, Sustainable CT was going to pilot, that is sort of the subset of the overall certification process that, you know, you get just like it's honing in on several different actions that it deems makes you a climate leader. It's all part of like the same action items that you can get for, you know, a lot of these is the same things that you would need for the silver certification. So it's not like they're separate, they're all kind of part of the same thing, but it's just like a different designation that you can get for getting 140 points to become a climate leader. So they just came out with the final version, because I think the call that I had participated in, that I had debriefed the committee on, was just sort of getting different towns' thoughts on it, and everybody weighed in and had comments, and they kind of took all of that and digested it and then came up with their formal program. So I'll distribute this afterwards, but it is, I think as we had discussed, the next step what I was going to do was ask the sustainable, if they're willing to do this, I don't know if they are, but ask the sustainable CT people if they're able to provide some guidance on where we stand as like from now, because a lot of these actions we've already taken, and we have points towards, to see, what are we at now, like 50, or are we at, 90? I don't know if they'll do that for us, but at least to kind of gauge where we stand. I waited to do that because I wanted to see exactly, this is a little bit different of a version of criteria than when I was on that call. So I knew that it was subject to some changes. But here are the different areas. So as you can see, like optimize for equity, that was already something that we had to do for the certification process, and we already have points for that. So a lot of these are all, develop an open space plan, increase the open space. These are all things, streamline solar permitting, like none of this is brand new. This is all stuff that's already in the sustainable CT program. So I'll distribute this. I don't think that there's really any, like, I think that if we can ascertain that we already have, let's say like halfway towards it, I don't see why we wouldn't make, some attempt at it, especially if it helps us kind of get further to silver. But I open it to your overall thoughts. If, if it's diluting our efforts too much, or whether we, want to go for it.
I think it depends where we already stand with the points.
Right.
I mean, if we're a couple of initiatives shy of getting this, then it makes sense to do it. But if we only have like 10 points on this list, then maybe focus on our first initiatives.
Yeah, I think at the meeting last month, I think we thought it was just diluting our energy, but this is a more specific list. I don't think we saw this.
Right. Yeah, because they were.
We might want to relook at it, but last month we thought it was beyond us or distracting us.
And I'm trying to find, oh, you'll be able to apply for this designation from your municipal dashboard by this spring. So it looks like we, because I was looking for, I couldn't find anything about a deadline, and I was like, well, when are we supposed to do this by? But I guess it's through the same portal, so I guess they'll open it up in the spring, and we can start. But I wanted to kind of keep you in the loop on what was the fact that they have this posted. Are there any areas on this, again, we can talk about it at another meeting, because I know that I just am getting this to you, but are there particular areas that you think like, oh, I think some of them are easier to do than others for our town. Like, I don't think, for example, we're going to get LEED silver on a municipal building anytime soon. I mean, I think that's a big undertaking, isn't it? I don't think we've applied for something like that.
Yeah.
So, some of these I think are going to be not viable. I know we were already in the process of this streetlight inventory thing. So
yeah,
maybe some of the ones that we were already kind of like already.
What did you say the magic number was again?
140.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of concur. It really depends on where we stand, and then how do you figure that out is really the question.
Yeah,
I'm going to ask them if they can divulge that. because they know, I'm gonna see if they might just kind of guide me in how to calculate it, but I can certainly, I feel like can't hurt to ask, right? Just ask the question,
Sure, of course.
because they might be able to tally it fairly easily. Yeah, they haven't mentioned anything about a deadline and anything that I can see, so I think they're still mulling that over, but it will open up sooner seemingly than the overall like silver certification process.
Well, that's my next question too, is, is this an August deadline as well? Or,
Right.
again, it
Right.
depends on the timeline we have for this. I think some of
Right.
these initiatives may have been started, but I don't think we got points for them.
Hmm.
Right.
Mhm.
And one thing, like when I see, for example, this might be too short a time frame, but like the reduced residual solid waste disposed per capita, like I know we're looking at, I think it's through SCARA or something, like a composting program for the transfer station. So like,
Mm.
maybe if we were to do something along those lines, we could show that we've reduced waste, or like the community energy campaign, that sort of sounds along the line of what you've been working
Yeah.
on, Craig.
Sure, yeah, I mean,
So
we can
like,
get points for that, but like what, it's hard to quantify this stuff, but I mean, somebody's doing it, so there has to be some structure around it.
yeah, each of these is like a like it's not just, each of these has like in the overall grid of the sustainable CT program, they have like different tools and spreadsheets and things like that you have to fill out. So it's this represents like a section of that overall action plan. So it's not just like you're not just like, oh, okay, I've improved open space. You know what I mean? Like, there's stuff that you have to do in order to show that you've satisfied the requirement for improving open space.
Right.
Hmm.
Okay. I'll send this out after the meeting, and I'll certainly share anything else I learn on that. The next, sorry, I keep losing my share screen. The next item, so yesterday I had a call with this person, Kevin Hackett from Native Energy, and just for jogging everybody's memory,
Mhm.
Native Energy is the one who had on, I think, their website, or was the Laurel Brook Farm project with a dairy farm out in East Canaan. That I think John had actually originally known of and circulated that link. And so I was like, all right, let's hear what Native Energy has to say. So it was really, really interesting. Basically, there are two different kind of avenues that Native Energy gets involved. Their role is sort of twofold. They do the consulting of the overall project, but actually because they're innately, like, their business model is carbon offsets. They actually have companies that are sort of their sponsors that are paying Native Energy, or basically sponsoring a project that Native Energy is facilitating in order to offset their carbon overall footprint, or big companies that have taken certain pledges from an ESG standpoint to, like, we're reducing our carbon footprint by X, Y, and Z. And so, for example, this company, which is Native Energy, which is headquartered near Burlington, Vermont, is one of their big clients is Ben & Jerry's. So Ben & Jerry's basically will, like, subsidize, or through Native Energy pay for one of these projects, because they can then kind of quantify the reduction of their carbon footprint as a result of Native Energy, like, paying for this on their behalf. So in essence, what that means is that Native Energy can, a lot of times in these types of projects, find like a backer, so that there's actually the cost of doing one of these projects is greatly reduced. He was also pointing to different different grant programs through the state, like through the USDA. He mentioned, sorry, I'm just pulling up my notes from this, but there's like different grant programs that are specifically for this type of, dairy carbon reduction program that is like already underway and is very not that it's easy to access, but basically like this has already been done for a lot of other dairy farms. So he said that there's some farms that aren't even paying anything outright, like there's no cost to them for this. They're usually doing some sort of in-kind participation in it. So for example, like instead of like, let's say they have farm equipment that needs to like dig a hole or something like that for some sort of machinery to do some part of the process, rather than Native Energy hiring a company that's going to come in and do that with a bunch of bulldozers or whatever. Like the farm will use their own equipment. So there is some maybe labor involved that they can contribute towards the overall cost to offset the cost. But he said like usually they can structure it so there's not as much of, or if any, actual cost that the farm itself has to absorb. The one thing so there's two kind of options, and it's pretty much a function of cost, but also what the farm in and of itself wants to do. And the first is, and it's also like the size of the farm too. Like and I haven't looked into this. Does anybody happen to know how many cows, like how many head of dairy cows each of the large North Stonington farms has? And I wasn't sure about their scale.
No.
Yeah, I need to look into that. And actually, I mean, I know Ben Leonard, so this call was yesterday and just kind of forgot to ask, but it can be done at different scales. So nothing is out of the question, but I just wasn't sure if, like, I don't know, do each of them have like 600 cows or like 2,000 cows? I just have no sense for, how many cows these farms have. So there's two different options. There's a separation system. And basically what that does is it's basically like you said, like a screw press, and it's to separate the solid from the liquids of the manure. And then part of it gets composted, which then to such an extent where it can go back in the stall as bedding. So for the farms, it's actually a cost reduction in many cases, because they can end up ultimately using that for bedding rather than having to buy new bedding in the form of shavings or straw. And he said the other output from this separation system was peat moss material, that then there are certain companies, such as one called Cowpots in Connecticut, and there's a bunch of other ones all through New England. But the one in Connecticut that Laurel Brook uses is called Cowpots, and they make those like peat moss pots that you buy your plants in for like, so basically there's the cost reduction of buying bedding that they can recycle this basically composted manure back into the stalls of the back into the bedding of the cows. But then also these companies like Cowpots will buy the this material to use for their peat moss. And he said the cost of that kind of overall, like as I said, there's all these different ways that they can structure it, so it's really not out like upfront cost to the farm, but like that kind of general cost, depending on the size of the farm, is about $250,000. But again, like it's all built into this model of, they provide the upfront costs, and then it's to the farm, it's, the reduction of bedding and the opportunity to sell the peat moss back. He didn't share like actual financial models with me, so I'm sure, there's a lot of inputs into it, but overall it's designed to be a cost reduction for the farm. Then there's a digester system, which is, so the separation system is basically absorb or somehow like reducing the methane, and the digester system by contrast is actually encouraging the methane instead of trying to reduce it. And basically you're creating methane that is burned to create electricity on the farm. And that's usually connected to the grid system. So it's just like if you have like a solar panel or something, it's being sold back to the grid. He said in historical, this is why I was curious about how many cows these farms have. He said historically these digester systems, it only really works if you have a minimum of 800 cows per farm. But he said there's these new, they just actually did an implementation of one of these new kind of digester systems that they import them from Belgium. And it's like a plug and play version. And those you can make it work for anywhere between like 300 and 800 cows. So it's easier. There's like a, you know, another option for a digester for a smaller scale farm. And yeah, so my other notes were just the company that makes that digester that's bought in Belgium for the smaller farms is called Bioelectric. And as I said, yeah, the grants that are available are through the USDA REAP program, REAP. And he said the NRCS also provides funding for these kind of projects. And as I mentioned, he said what the farms oftentimes do is in-kind labor. So that contribute to, let's say, like he said, you know, let's say they have, if there's like a concrete portion, they might have like a cousin who, you know, is like a concrete pourer or something. So it's trying to make it a little bit more where the labor itself is not completely outsourced, where it's some of it is done by the farm itself because it has access to a lot of this machinery. The other, let's see, what else was I going to say? In terms of considerations for, he said what's important to know in terms of whether this makes sense for any of these farms is you know, how many cows are we dealing with? And the choice, I said, you know, how do you really determine between separation and the digester system? And he said, it's really up to the farm, like what they're looking for. You know, do they want that composted bedding? You know, do they want to produce their own energy through the digester? Like, I mean, obviously it's sold back to the grid, but like, you know, it's a choice made by the farmer that's partially driven by the number of cows, but partially now with this new Belgian plug and play, like it's not as definitive. But it's important to find out from the farmers what kind of bedding they're currently using, because in either case of the separation system or the digester system, if they're using sawdust or straw, it works well. If they're using sand, it gets a lot more complicated, I guess, in terms of like the way that the manure is fed into the compost or into the digester. So he said it's really hard to get if they're using sand and they're not amenable to like switching over, because I guess it's like a big thing for them to switch, that they're kind of like out of the running. So that those would be like the first questions that he would ask to the farms is, you know, how many heads of cows and like what are they doing currently, and what they're currently using for bedding. The interesting thing he said about the digester system is based on, and I'm going to see if I can explain this correctly. Basically, he said in some cases, the farms end up having, let's say, like Native Energy pay for the costs initially, but then in some cases, like in year 1 or year 2, they ultimately buy out Native Energy for like the cost of putting in the digester, because the math works such that the rate that they're able to, it's through some sort of, oh gosh, like basically the maintenance that's required for the digester can be done less expensively by the farm than if Native Energy does it or something. And basically that means that the revenue stream for the farm is higher than the revenue stream that Native Energy would sort of get by paying for the upfront cost of the digester. So sometimes the farms ultimately like take out Native Energy in order to benefit from the, you know, they're getting paid for all of this energy that the grid is paying, you know, giving back to them for producing it. So I asked about tax like credits, and interestingly enough, he was like, oh, we actually, you know, for all these other wind and solar projects that we're involved in, there's always tax credits for it. And he was like, interestingly enough, in the dairy ones that I've worked for, there's not been like tax credit, you know, things that are benefiting the farms. And he was going to ask a specialist about that specifically, but I was like, how could this not have a tax benefit for the farm if they put something like this in place? But he said he was going to find out, but like Laurel Brook, for example, didn't do that. But he also said that the owners of Laurel Brook, and even if we wanted to like talk to other farms in other states, that they've been very amenable to having, farmers talk to them and really hear what it entailed and hearing, how it's gone, that they are willing to sort of be references for the program. So that is my spiel. I thought it was really interesting though.
I just checked. Mariah Lewis milks 350 cows.
Okay.
And they're the biggest.
They're the
They did
biggest,
run,
okay.
they did win an award half a dozen years ago, which included environmental practices.
Oh, that's interesting. Did it say for what, like what they do?
I read the award for Connecticut Dairy Farm of the Year, received the Green Pasture Award. It includes crop management, environmental practices, contribution to agriculture, and overall blah, blah, blah.
Alexis, have you been there?
To Mariah Lewis?
Yeah.
No.
So the kids every year, not every year, but I don't know if it's like second grade, they do a field trip there. So I've been, and they do have this huge, like concrete vat that's in the
Huge.
ground. It's full of manure. It stinks like crazy. And I'm always like, get away from that, don't fall in. But they obviously have some sort of program going on because they do have a centralized system for handling it.
Do you know if it's like, did they mention, and then this is composted for bedding or something?
No. I mean, it's just a bunch of kids running on a farm,
Oh.
I'm sure years ago I heard them describe it, but I can't remember. I don't know anything about it, except the big tank is there.
I see. Yeah, I wonder, because it sounds like the first thing I thought was, well, isn't this all kind of naturally so it must be that this separation system or whatever it's called must be something much more specific than just composting. Like, I don't know, we compost our horse manure and it's like, yeah, you know what I mean? It's composted, but this must be different, because he said that this actually like capture something about it is very specialized with the screw press system, but also that is like inherently the reduction of the methane. So I don't know.
Yeah, I've seen it all described. There was, I guess it was probably CBS Sunday Morning. I saw a long program on this, but I said, don't ask me all the details. But that's a big focus, trying to reduce the methane. And then there's the other program of this algae that they've discovered.
Yes.
This cows, a specific algae.
Yes.
The methane is reduced. I mean, it's not like half, it's much more than that. It's reduced to almost nothing. It's also cheap. For some reason or other, it affects the digestive system and the cows actually eat less. So it's cheaper for the farmers. It's just scaling up. It's just, making it available, but it's all has to be scaled. Anything new has to be scaled up, but it's saves money for the farm.
Yeah, and I heard the same thing on How to Save a Planet. It was talking about kelp or seaweed for exactly that same end of reduction, and somehow the way that their digestion works. It's amazing. I had no idea. And so that was like another thing I thought, well, if we're talking to these farms, we might as well ask them if they're feeding their cows this kelp stuff, because to your point, maybe it's less, maybe if they implemented it, it would be more cost effective for them, not just, we're doing this for the environment.
Well, they are aware of these things, but it's just a matter of it's a specific algae, and it's a matter of scale.
The interesting thing was, and I'm going to go on a little How to Save a Planet tangent, but there was, just because it's close to home, there was a 2-part series on kelp. And person who really is championing kelp farming, and he is from Connecticut, and his whole operation is in Long Island Sound. So I just thought it was nice to have something that was like making. It was funny because I just listened to the episode and I was researching his. I think it's called Green Wave is the name of his nonprofit. And he's written the book and everything. And I said, oh, I'm gonna, here he's another Connecticut guy, and I'm gonna contact him and see if he could come in and speak to our sustainability committee. And then I like look at their website, and it's like as seen on CBS News, and like all these things are like national outlets. And I'm thinking, I don't know if he's gonna come join our meeting for a night. Like I think he's probably got bigger places to be. But I didn't know whether it was just like some little operation, but it's worth checking out. It's called Green Wave, and it's really, really interesting what he's doing. But I will stop talking about how to save the planet. But yeah, it was a whole thing on kelp farming, and there was a tie-in to feeding it to cows.
Mhm.
This is a dumb question, but I always thought Pariah Lewis was beef cows. They do dairy too?
No, it's dairy.
Oh, I always thought that it was beef. What are the three farms? It's the Lewis's, the Lerners, and what's the other one?
Well, there are only three. Well,
I thought
Bankers,
they were like the three big ones.
big one. I don't know. Well, Bankers, I don't
Palmer's?
know how big they are these days, but
How big's the Palmer farm?
Palmer is the one I'm thinking of.
Mhm.
Yeah. Are they big too?
well, Brian Lewis is the biggest one then by
Okay.
far.
Okay.
I saw, a week or so ago, I saw one of their trucks hauling hay bales, and it was coming from across the Baldwin Bridge, across the Connecticut River.
Oh my
And
God.
they carry hay from everywhere.
Wow. That's a lot of mouths to feed. Think about just the hay I need for 2 horses, and I can't even imagine for 300 cows.
Mhm. Well, more than 300, 350 they milk. I mean, you have to cycle the cows or the young
Oh.
ones and the cycled the ones that are breeding. Yeah,
Right. right.
that would probably be close to 500 cows.
I see. Do you know them at all? Like, do you think that they would be open to something
Not
like
right
this?
now. I don't know anybody that's involved right now. I mean,
Yeah, I don't, I know, Craig, you had mentioned that you had kind of like you've, met Farmer Bree on several occasions. Do you think that it would be worth kind of like running this past her as not because she doesn't have the operation for something like this, but you know what I mean? Like,
No,
just
she's got like a
situation.
handful of animals, I think, but
Right. Just to like see what she thinks, or whether from a farmer's perspective before we move forward, since she's like probably.
I
the
think
most
that's
open.
reasonable. I think that's reasonable. Her email, let's see. It's probably just terra firma. Yeah. Yeah, why don't let's do that. So, I mean, the funny thing about us doing this, right, is the most impactful stuff in North Stonington is stuff that, apparently you guys know a little about, I know even less about, we all don't really know anything about. And the most impactful thing we could really do is get agriculturalists on board, because that's the better part of what we do. So,
Right.
so all that stuff you just talked about, I think maybe if we put together like an email, like a letter, that we could send over, or I'll send over.
To Bree?
Yeah. Yeah. Just like what do you what do you think about this? How does this land with you? People.
Right.
I think that'd be
Yeah,
reasonable.
I
And it's
can-
like, no pressure. She can respond when she wants to or not, or
Yeah.
whatever. Like, it doesn't hurt to try.
I can draft an email and send it around, and you guys can edit it as you like. I take no offense to any sort of change it as much as you'd like, but just because I have gave you the spiel on the native energy call, I'm happy to do the first draft.
Yeah. That sounds great.
Cool. And I haven't.
My concern with approaching the farmers, I mean, they are on top of this. They look at these things the same as we do. And my concern is approaching them looking like novices that don't know anything, trying to tell somebody something that they already know. And
Right.
we don't come off looking very well that way.
Right.
I think we need one of them on board with us first that can do the approach. I don't think the people that are on the meeting right now are the ones that are able to do this.
Right.
Yeah,
What
I mean, that's
about-
sort of the idea because she is, I mean, she's a farmer, but she's also like a young,
Yeah.
hip, aware human, you know, that like
Mhm.
came into that world. Like she's not like a born and bred farmer. So she's of that world now, but she's not like
Yeah.
of that world in her like bones. So I think she might be like a good liaison, like
Right.
she's got a foot in each land kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How about even adding a farmer to our committee?
Well, yeah.
I mean,
if
that's
someone
really
could,
the
that's
goal,
exactly
right?
what I
Yeah.
meant. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly it.
That'd be
Okay.
amazing if we could get somebody.
Too busy
Um,
talking, doing stuff to talk about stuff, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Right. I wonder if Tula or Pat, do you know, I've only met her once. Ben's mother, I think it's Belinda, isn't it? Leonard?
Mhm.
She's a
I don't know
vegetable
her.
farmer.
I don't know her.
I don't know
Know
her.
her.
I only met her once, but she, oh, you know what? She was on, how I know her. I'm like, how do I know her? She was on, maybe I've met her more than once. She was on the farmers market subcommittee with, that I was on. It was a short-lived committee, but she was on that.
Mhm.
And I wonder if she was open to being on that committee. I wonder if she might be willing, because that's her family, but she's more on the vegetable side. From what I understood from her, she doesn't get involved anymore with like the cows. But I could certainly ask her. I probably have her email address somewhere. I mean, certainly if Farmer Bree would like to join, but I don't know if she has enough time to do something like this.
Well, I
Probably
still think
exhausted
writing
by-
her about this, just her thoughts would be a good idea. And then, you know, she could say like, ooh,
Yeah.
I'm interested in that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and maybe if she joins, she could, I mean, I'm sure she's super like both of them would presumably be very connected
Mhm.
within the town and that kind of farming community. I haven't heard anything back from like Sustainable States after that initial call. So I'm just kind of going off of their time frame for this. So I'll let you know if I hear anything more from them in terms of what they're planning on doing to give us technical assistance, but no news from that front. The next item, unless anybody has any other comments on the farming stuff. Energy audits. Anything to add or mention or anything like that?
So I unloaded the brochures just before Christmas. I put a stack of the residential ones at the library, and then I brought the rest over to town hall. Antoinette was going to put them in one of those brochure little sleeves across from where she sits, and then Nate was there that day, so I gave him the ones that were intended for municipalities and companies, and he was going to distribute them in some other meeting, small business initiative, something, right? And we talked for a while about You know, just all the things and the challenges, and he's a nice guy. I like him a lot.
Yeah, he is nice.
So
Mhm.
yeah, that was sort of like I think a full circle as far as our little step of getting things, you know, raising some awareness. I mean,
Right.
obviously there's, you know, potentially a lot
I'll be
more
right back.
to do. Sure. Um, you know, I think moving forward, you know, looking down like Earth Day plans, anytime if there's events, I think that's a really great opportunity to have
Right.
things like that to talk about because it's an action plan or an action point for people. It's like, well, what can I do? Well, you can do this. It's good for the planet and you'll save money. Like everyone loves that. So
Right.
I think it's a good thing to keep in our back pocket for engaging with people and kind of that crossover. Here's why it's important for you sort of conversation.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And maybe that's a good segue. So yeah, no, thank you for doing the brochure drop-offs and, you know, hopefully it will catch some attention. I was gonna to skip to the, I think I've covered point 3 enough for tonight. I don't think you need to hear me talk about the podcast anymore. But I'm skipping to the locally sourced products unless somebody has something to add, because that was really in hopes that maybe Nate would be joining, because he had mentioned this person, like I got or something, that he was sort of like a wholesaler of aggregating different locally sourced products in like a marketplace. And I followed up by email with Nate about it and I haven't heard back, but I'll follow up again. But I just added that as an agenda because I know sometimes Nate makes our meetings and I was going to ask him if he had the contact information or could reach out to that guy. But unless somebody else has anything to add on locally sourced products, that was really, I was going for that contact guy. Okay, Earth Day plan. I know this was something that came up in a prior meeting, so I just wanted to make sure it stayed top of mind. If you know, if we, so well, I will open the floor to you first, and then I had sort of an idea, but you guys first. If anybody had anything that they wanted to share or ideas or plan or anything like that.
I have no particular plans. I'm just looking at it. So it's on a Friday, right? 22nd.
Oh, that's convenient.
That happens to be a day off for me, which is fantastic.
Oh,
I would
that's
love
good.
to be a part of like some town, whether it's a cleanup or, you know, it doesn't have to be anything crazy, but some like hands-on, get out and make town a prettier place. So we can talk about what that might be, but I'd love to be a part of that.
Awesome. I wonder if we're able to like, Pat, you might know the answer to this. Are we able to use the space at Hewitt Farm, like the ones under the picnic table area, if we request permission? Like, do they let people hold events there, or is it really? Oh, I think you're muted, Pat. But Tula was nodding. Oops, still, I think you're still muted. Absolutely.
I'm
Oh, there we go. There we go.
mute. I kept hitting it, nothing was happening.
Did
Well, sure, but besides, we're town, but yeah,
Like, do you think that would be a good place to host something? If we did like any kind of in-person event?
I think I think what they do is charge for private events, but we are a town committee, but you do need to reserve them.
yeah.
But that's a
think
great
there's a-
spot.
Yeah, I was thinking, do you think of any other place? I mean,
No.
I just think that's kind of killing two birds with one stone, because that's like preserved
Yeah.
land and as a historic site and everything.
Mhm.
What do you think about, like, should we have something that is an event in one place, or do you prefer something, I mean, it could be multifaceted, so we could do like do you prefer something that's more of like a trash cleanup, or something that's more of a event where, people come and we have like different vendors or something like that that are kind of eco-friendly or something to promote.
Mm,
Events are really great. They're just, they're hard to get people to come to,
yes,
is my experience. It's
Definitely.
a lot of work.
yes.
Mhm.
And I think for something of our scope, it's a great thing to like piggyback on other events.
Yeah,
Like when there's the, really anything, I mean, all
I
these
was
happen
thinking-
downtown, if like, then we show up and we have like our little table and we do our thing a little bit, like people are coming for other reason and we're there, but I don't know, I think setting something up,
Right.
it'll be
Yeah,
hard.
maybe just try, a lot of people are doing things for Earth Day, various organizations and various individuals, just trying to get a handle on what everybody's doing and try to promote everybody else's work. As a
Right.
unity, the Girl Scouts are doing this, North Stonington Citizens Land Alliance is doing this, the library is doing this, try to be an umbrella.
That's a good idea. We could sort of put it out through the town and the website and just, calling all North Stonington town members, what are you doing for Earth Day? And like compile it in one place and then.
And then really push it as much as we can, or radio, whatever, social media and radio.
We could just use Hewitt as like the starting place, like the kickoff to whatever Earth Day initiative you're doing. So, I don't
Right.
know if like, I don't know, like if the garbage company hands out bags or something, I don't know, like if there's something that, just make a big of like I said, like a kickoff event down at Hewitt, meet down there, get the energy
Yeah.
going, share your initiatives, and then everyone part their ways, do their thing, share it on social media, create a hashtag, something fun,
Yeah.
I guess.
yeah, those
Like
are,
that.
one question I had was, the No So Festival, does anybody know how you end up getting, like, can you get a booth in the No So Festival, or how does that work?
I believe Jen Strunk is the one running it. And I thought normally it's in the fall,
Yeah, in September.
because I
Oh,
think this year they
September.
tried doing it for the spring, but then it ended up being too short of a time frame
Right.
to organize.
I was gonna say, I thought it was in June, but that's probably
You know
because
what?
it was this year.
That's sometimes in June has been this town-wide
Yard sale.
Yeah, but then that was,
Oh, I
that
see,
was
I see.
in the fall or something this year. Things moved, COVID moved every
Right.
schedule
You know,
around. Nobody
Alexis-
knows what's happening.
You did remind me, I did one night volunteer for a No So Fest. I completely forgot. This is like 2 weeks ago. So yeah.
You volunteered to do No So Festival this year?
Yeah, because when you go to Perks and Corks and you with your friends, like you end up volunteering for things that
What are you volunteering for?
to be part of the
Oh,
team
run
of
it.
hosting.
Oh, so you're in.
Yeah, I forgot.
Because I was wondering if we could do have a sustainability booth.
We should have a
Where-
table.
Yeah.
We, could have something that draws people in, like a snack or something. I was thinking like kelp snacks or something. They said that Gray Sale actually has a kelp. They were touting that Gray Sale actually on this podcast that they were one of the ones who used kelp as an ingredient in one of their sour beers. And
Mhm,
because he was
yeah.
talking about, all the ways to use kelp. And so anyway, I was thinking like, I don't know, maybe we could have stuff like that to promote, those kind of things. But yeah, if that's, to your point, maybe it's too hard to have our own designated, like, hey, let's have vendors and all this stuff and talk about sustainability. Maybe just have a table at NOSO, and we know that we'll get an audience just by the people that show up to that rather than having to promote our own event.
Well, and what kind of initiative could we be part of as far as the North Stonington Fair goes? Because there's got to be a lot of garbage there. There's got to be, I mean, just a lot of things to do.
When is that always? I can't remember.
The second weekend in June.
Oh, that's
July.
in June.
July.
July, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's what I meant.
It's like,
And you're-
is it the first or second Thursday? It's always Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah.
You know,
It depends how it falls as far as Thursday. It's the second Saturday at least.
do you know who hosts that?
But it's between the Grange and the fire department.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Okay.
actually, anybody can be on the fair committee. You don't have to be one of those people. It would be Thursday, July 7th through the 10th.
And do they let people have, I mean, I know they have like, you can get, like, what are they called? Johnny cakes, they have like food vendors, but do they have any sort of like more informational vendors, or is it pretty much?
It's the Historical Society tried it, I don't know, 1 year or 2 year. It's expensive and you don't really get people. I mean, you're put off where the commercial vendors are, and the last couple years, it seemed the quality of the commercial vendors is going down and you're stuck over with them, and it's no fun being there. You're not getting any activity.
I see. Okay. So maybe but maybe to your point, maybe there's something to do with trash or,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
even for those kind of things, like maybe it's even like, I mean, I wonder even something as silly as like, not silly, sorry, but I wonder if we could even do, sorry, I'm just thinking off the top of my head here. If there's a way to get, because the Sustainable CT grant program seems to say, it's pretty easy to put something in place for a small dollar amount. I wonder if it's something where we could like do a grant program for something like providing like more compost, all of the packaging for all the vendors, like, you know what I mean? Like when they put the hot dog on a plate, that all the plates we would provide as part of the grant that would be like compostable, or all the trash bags would be like made, we could provide all the trash bags that are made out of like, recycled
Cornstarch, yeah.
plastic bags. Yeah, exactly. So I wonder if that, like, because there's probably so much waste of all the like plastic food stuff. I wonder if we could do that. I wonder, could the fair tell us, because I have no idea what like that would cost in terms of like replacement. Like, do you think the fair has any kind of estimates for like how many people attend and how many like buy stuff, like how many tons of trash do they typically pick up afterwards or something like that? I don't know if they have that data.
Yeah.
Is there like a point person for the
There's a fair committee that meets all
Fair committee.
year. I don't know anything about them, but yeah.
I could find out
Taking
from,
notes.
do you think like Antoinette or Christine or somebody would know maybe? Should I ask them? Who was kind of like the leader of the fair committee?
Well, it'd be the firehouse and the Grange or the fair committee
Okay.
actually, unfortunately, I think Steve Holliday was the chairman of the fair committee.
Is that a bad thing? I don't know who he
Well, he
is.
just died.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think it said that in his obituary.
Oh,
There
dear.
is a website for the fair.
Okay.
Yeah, I
North
just found
Stonington
it.
Fair, is it .com? I can't see what this is.
.org.
.org.
Okay.
Do they have like here, I can put, sorry. I can Google North
July
Stonington.
Yeah,
14th to 17th.
Oh, really?
There
Wonder
is
why.
an email and address.
There is, you said?
Yeah, there is.
Oh, okay. So
Mm.
should I just email them and run it by them?
Yeah, see how we can help.
Yeah, that sounds great. Um,
Cool. I will email them and see what I might get like a go pound sand. Okay. All right, cool. Anything on that before I continue?
mm-mm.
One thing I was going to, and so this is a couple part question. So, A, Jim Russell, the IT manager, is establishing, probably going to regret this, but said that he can establish a Facebook page just for the sustainability committee. Because I thought our, like as a subset
Yeah.
of the town's committee, sorry, the town's Facebook page, because I thought we made this, the Sustainable North Stonington, which he actually just made some updates. I added some additional content, like Tula had sent me a couple resources, so I had those added. The smart thermostat Tula, so I had them add that. I think you had sent me something about the Connecticut executive order to curb the state's carbon emissions, so I had added that. I had read an article in the Washington Post about US emissions, so he added that. And he also added some content to the sustainability tips. You are not going to be shocked that I had him add how to save a planet. And the interesting thing also, just for reference, I'll circulate this afterwards too, but what I like about it is, even if you don't want to listen to the podcast, at the end of, like, they have show notes for each of the episodes, and they're all calls to action. So they're basically like, all right, you listen to this, like, what can you actually do about it? And so there's a compilation, there's a Google Doc that's a compilation of all of their calls to action from all of their episodes. So even if you just like want to look for like the crash course in, looking for something that you're like, oh, I want to, help in this way, like, here's all their calls to action. So I had him update this, but I was thinking, gosh, this is like, how many people are actually probably visiting this site? Like, it's not like there's any engagement. And so I thought probably have more of a shot of getting traction for some of these tips and resources if we had a social media presence for our committee. So he said he'd be happy to do that. So my follow-up questions on that are, well, first of all, does anybody object? I know getting into Facebook opens a whole nother can of worms, but does anybody have any objections for our committee having a Facebook page?
No.
The second follow-up question is, does anybody, so Jim said that he has to be an administrator, and he can make any one of us an administrator. Does anybody else, like, so that, you could just post stuff? Does anybody want to not be an administrator, or should, like, I guess you don't want to be an administrator? Or
Okay.
you do?
I'm not on any social media, and I appreciate all the things that it's used for, and I'm not going to start being on social media now.
Okay. I'm not personally on Facebook either, so I'm sort of like, oh yeah, I don't really.
I
do this.
wonder, remember when Casey came to that one
Yes,
meeting? She
That was
said
my
that,
other
right?
follow-up question. That was my other follow-up question is, can you see if she'd want to be our person?
I will. I won't do that one thing, but I'll do the other thing.
Because I was thinking, even if, like, even if she can't make our committee, I don't know how you all feel about this, but even if she can't make the meetings, or she doesn't want to get involved in the meetings or whatever, if she could be, if she's good at this, like, I don't know anything about this, so I can post, but I don't know how to engage and get people to like you, and I just
Yeah.
don't know anything about that kind of thing. So if she even, like, we could give her the material, she wouldn't need to, like, be, thinking of what to post. But if she would just be the one who sort of like, oh, then somebody liked it, and so you like them back, or whatever it is, that would be amazing.
That would be amazing. Okay, I will inquire, investigate, and report back.
Awesome, thank you.
I think that's a meeting where I wasn't there.
Do
That's
you,
right.
do you like Facebook, Pat? Are you a Facebook?
I use it,
aficionado?
but I mean, limitedly. Yeah,
Do you want
Yeah.
it to be, Jim, to make you an admin, or are you voting
I
yourself off? the
can.
island?
I
Okay.
can. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, as far as, running a page, I haven't been administrator. I don't really know anything about it, except you can kick people off or.
Bad behavior.
Yeah,
Tula, do you want me to have you added to, or do you want to stay off?
you can. Yeah, you can.
It's fine. I run at least a half a dozen pages, so it's.
Oh my God.
Uh-huh.
I'm on a lot.
You're on
Oh
a
my
lot.
gosh.
I'm not.
She's a natural.
You're gonna be much better than I will be. I'm so bad at it. Okay, cool. So I will let him know. And then he said he was gonna establish the page for us. And I just thought maybe that would give us more visibility than that poor little page, which I love so dearly, but I don't know how many people are actually visiting it. So
Mm,
the other thing I was thinking was like off whatever, let's whatever we end up doing for Earth Day, for example, I was almost thinking of like, and I'm sure I haven't researched it, I'm sure other organizations have done something similar. I can't be the only one to come up with something like this, but that the idea for it came out of, again, the thing that there's a whole episode on how I save a planet on does your individual impact if you're taking different, like what are the things that lower your own carbon footprint, and do you really make a difference? Like you could try all day long to do all these things, but is it really matter?
mhm.
And essentially the conclusion is roughly not really, just because it's such a small scale of the overall carbon that's across the planet. But what they were saying was that it's a snowball effect. Like if you are really influential if you're doing something and you're telling a bunch of people about it. So like just doing it yourself is not really helping that much, but if you're doing something and then getting other people on board, then that ripple effect is actually making an impact. So what I was thinking was like in that vein, and this would be very, I think, necessary for us to have a really pretty good social media presence in order to do this, but maybe like on the heels of Earth Day, almost doing like every week is Earth Day, or every, it's where it's like something that's consistent, and it's kind of the telephone game almost of like, okay, I'm going to do something, and maybe this is all off of our off of our Facebook page or something like that, where it's like, I'm going to post something that I did to the town's, sustainability committee page. And then somebody else has to say, okay, I did it because I did this because of that person. And now I'm going to do something else new. So today I, walked to go get coffee instead. I'm coming up with stupid examples, but like today I walked to get coffee instead of driving the car to get it. And then somebody else says, oh, today I, inspired by this person, I did that too. And then, tomorrow I'm going to, I don't know, not buy a plastic bottle, use my recyclable bottle. And you know what I mean? And then you're constantly just like having to feed off of what somebody else did and then kind of create your own thing. I mean, it's just a rough idea, but I was sort of thinking like maybe we could use Earth Day as almost like a jumping off point to start a campaign like that. That's a little bit more just like trying to get involvement, but more of like, we're each doing little things, but it helps if like we can kind of do it collectively and share what we're doing, each of us, in little ways, rather than it being in like our own little bubbles of, okay, I'm trying to be good, but not, you know what I mean? Does that make any sense?
So an ice bucket challenge without the ice bucket, right?
Oh, yeah. I was like, this sounds familiar, but I don't know where I came up with it. I never participated in it. Is it, sorry, I shouldn't admit that, but is that what it's like?
Mm,
Yeah, because you challenge someone else. You challenge 10 of your friends to do it, or you call
Oh.
someone out specifically in your video, and I would say, Alexis, I dare you to do this. And you're not on social media, but if you were, you'd be like, oh, I gotta do it, and then you would do it.
Okay. Okay. So something like that, but for off of like the sustainability page. And is there a hashtag and then everybody uses that hashtag to kind of link back to sustainable North Stonington, sustainable North Stonington, basically?
Yeah, you would create a specific hashtag for people to share.
Okay. Ooh, I mean, maybe that could be fun. Maybe.
So come up with a ridiculous thing to do to raise awareness.
Oh, so you have to do a ridiculous thing. It's not like oh my God. I'm gonna
No,
walk to
your
Groton.
thing is a thing too, it's just a little bit different.
We can think about it.
Okay. I just thought rather than maybe we could do to the point we made about, a cleanup activity or something like that on Earth Day, but I was thinking like something that would make it more of like the launch of something that's more ongoing rather than like we did Earth Day and now we're done because it's not Earth Day anymore.
Well, like one of the small changes I made, and I'm realizing the impact is I don't use coffee pods anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't think you think about how many you're dumping and how easy it is just to buy the plastic container and put the coffee in it yourself every
Yep.
day.
Yeah.
I refuse to use coffee pods. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did the
Yeah,
exact same thing. I used
That's a
to
good
have
example.
Oh,
That's a
yeah,
great
one thing
example.
that's frustrating, as far as disposable everything's, I think we were really making progress. And then COVID came along, and for
Right.
safety reasons, for medical reasons, we've gone back 20 years.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I don't know if we're
really
going to be
true.
able to make up the lost ground. Yeah, progress was being made, but it's out the window.
I was glad when they started at grocery stores because for a while they weren't letting you bring your own canvas bags. And then, and I was like, oh no, all of this, like we had just gotten through the whole plastic bag thing and then they were all back. But then they brought them. So I was glad to see that they got less strict on that. But yeah, you're completely right. Or the mask, like I always, before I throw them away, I always pull because I've heard of like them getting caught on animals' necks and stuff like that, like the ear pieces. So I always try to pull those off the mask before I throw it because whatever. Anyway, sorry, I was going to go into it. Like, I don't think I haven't figured out a way. Maybe one of you knows, but that I don't throw them away that often. But like the N95 mask, the KN95 mask or whatever, I don't think you can wash them, right? Like I know the cloth mask you can wash, but I don't think
No,
you can.
you can't.
So I know they're so wasteful.
You're muted
Anyway.
again, Pat. Muted.
The regular surgical masks, just by accident, I've washed them twice and they come out looking like new.
Oh, really?
Maybe they're not safe, maybe they're not doing anything, but I have used them after they've been washed. I didn't do it on purpose, but I've done it. It
I would
works.
have thought that they would disintegrate because they're
No,
like, oh, interesting.
No, they do. They hold up through the washing machine. That's a good question. I wonder if it loses any degree of effectiveness after it's getting washed. I don't know.
no.
I burned through so many of these things in the office. I feel terrible, but I remember when I first got into medicine, I was a real I was on like the Earth Committee in college, and I was always into that stuff. And I would just reuse and save literally everything. And then I started in med school, and you have to throw everything away. It's like one use, right? Everything gets thrown away in medicine. And that was like a really hard part of my first year of school, is like just literally just using something once and throwing it away, because I was so trying to not do that with my life. But you look, I mean, it's everywhere, right? I mean, it's plastic garbage. It's like, it's such an uphill battle when all that stuff is produced and mass market sold. And, you walk into a dollar store and it's just literally a whole store full of junk that's made to get thrown away. Like, I don't know. dollar stores are literally like the worst places on earth, I think. It makes me feel like hopeless for humanity when I walk into those places.
Yeah, yeah.
And they just went up. It's now a $1.25 store.
Yeah, right.
I walked in the other day, it was $1.25. I'm like, what? Gotta change your name now.
Oh, man. Oh, I know, it's. Yeah, anyway, sorry, went into a tangent on math. Oh, anything else before I move to the next thing?
Good.
Bay Street Textiles, I think if I remember correctly, I think you knew somebody or were involved in the,
PTO.
thank you.
I did speak with a member of the PTO and she was going to bring it up with the president. I don't think it's a good time. There's so much
Okay.
going on with kids in COVID in school and they just changed, like kids they're not doing contact tracing anymore. And it's just, it's been very frustrating for everybody right now at the school. So I think one more initiative would probably not be supported.
Sure. So maybe this could be something that is tabled and revisited maybe next year when there's COVID or
well,
something.
I guess like one of the things I was thinking about is like, I'm not a parent pickup drop off person. Even with COVID, parents would sit in an hour at school waiting to pick up their kid to be at the front of the line. I'm not going to bring my clothes to school to pick, when I pick up my kid or whatever. I'm lucky if I remember their backpack. Like, so I don't necessarily think that having it at the school is going to be as productive as having it like at the transfer station.
And I think they already are doing one at the transfer station. So I don't think it's preventing it from, because the highway foreman, is it Don, I think, or something, had already been in touch with her.
Is there a box there at the transfer station?
I don't know if it's there yet. I know that she
Okay.
had said that he had been interested in it.
Okay.
I don't know if it's still.
But last month, I thought, I don't remember who said it, but I thought someone said that there was a problem with doing it transfer station. Maybe not, maybe I'm wrong, but the subject came up that other places have been effective using it at schools, and I get it, Tula. We suggested that if the schools couldn't do it, maybe the library would be interested, but what are we talking about? What size container? What is it we're talking about?
It's like one of those, you know, those bins that you see sometimes in like some like a gas station or a business's like driveway, where it's just one of those things where you pull the
It's pretty big,
thing and then you put and then you go like that.
Like they have one at Stop and Shop. The clothing bin.
Like the big clothing things. Yeah. Well, so I don't think you could put that at the library driveway. I thought we were talking about something different, but yeah, I know what those are.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's amazing how many people in town don't go to the transfer station. It would be nice if there was another location.
Right. What about in one of the park and rides?
The rec?
Yeah.
At the rec building?
Oh, yeah.
That's a good idea. Who would be the contact person for the rec building?
Well, that's probably Board of Selectmen, I would think.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You go to Bob for that, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I can certainly broach the topic.
Yeah.
So these bins would be at no cost to the town. We just need to find a location for them.
Yeah, that is my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah. Good. Yeah.
Okay. Anything on pollinator pathways? I know it's not the season yet, but I just wanted to give you a chance.
Yeah, I intend next week to start trying again for the application for crowdfunding. And it would, if we get it all set up, it would go live probably late February. We work with Emily Noyes at the library for a kids garden in a small plot in the back. Still working on getting more people involved for a plot near the front at the Congregational Church, and the Garden Club will be planning more in-town properties. And that's about it for now. And I'm supposed to be at another meeting right now for that.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I forgot that you're done at
The
7.
Garden
I need
Club,
to be-
the first Garden Club board
Sorry.
meeting of the year started at 7. So
I'm sorry. I completely.
I was waiting
needed-
till you get to that, and then I'm gonna take off
Oh, I'm sorry,
just about
Pat.
now. So I'm gonna say goodnight.
Good night, Pat. Thank you for your
Good night.
patience.
Okay, take care.
Good night.
And I think I already went over the website updates, so I think we're good unless there's anything else that you want to talk about.
I think that covers it. I think we have a couple little action steps in there. That's good. I mean, just so we're doing monthly. So this was a little late. So we've got February, March, and April. We have 3 meetings before Earth Day,
Right,
which is not a lot.
right. We can always do a special meeting. I think it's
We can
what
do
we
special
talked
meeting,
about.
right? But maybe for next time, we could kind of come to the table with like an actual plan of something to do so that we can, it doesn't have to be crazy, but just, something. Is there any, I mean, you think of any areas of town that could use a cleanup specifically more than,
We'll always Winnichog Hill. I mean, there's always garbage on the way to the dump.
right, that's true. Yep, where Lantern Hill is and the hike over there.
Yeah. There's always, litter on Route 2, but last year, like when I did the garbage cleanup with the kids, like I didn't want to take them on Route 2 to
Right,
pick up.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Are there any waterway? I know, because I'm always worried about stuff getting from rivers, like streams into river, the whole ocean thing. Do we have any like waterways that you think are close enough that would get polluted with trash? Like behind my house, I have y'all buckets, whatever, that little estuary thing, but like I don't see trash back there because it's in. When I've walked it before, I've never seen any trash because it's basically in the middle of patchwork. So like, fortunately, it's not something that fits a lot of trash, but like, I don't know if we have any waterways that,
What's the waterway that runs right through town?
oh yeah, what's that called?
Where? The Chinook River?
Or Chinook.
Right,
Do you think that gets trash?
I don't know.
This is not something I would do, yeah, but actually it might be too soon. So Bill Ricker and the Conservation Committee, just, one of their initiatives was having the kayak trail that just,
Yeah.
Yes,
so
yes,
they
yes.
have the kayak trail open from Boombridge all the way down to Westerly now. So you can just go, follow that path. But granted, I mean, I don't think you'd be picking up garbage in a kayak, but
Oh, but you could do it in a canoe. That's a good idea. I did it. I did that.
really?
The kayak, we did it in a canoe or in the fall. It's beautiful. It's like, you wouldn't think that you were like in the middle of, towns and areas. And then you go by the bridge and the cows are all there. And it was a
Oh, really?
great little trip. Yeah.
Did you see any trash?
I don't remember. I mean, yes, actually I do remember because there had been some flooding over the summer. So there were spots where there was like trash hanging from trees because the water was up that high and then it came down. So I did. I fished a couple things out of the trees while we were
Oh,
going
wow.
through. But we had a canoe full of other things that it wasn't a concerted effort to. But that would be a cool thing to do, is take a canoe trip intentionally to clean up the river. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Well, I was
That's a
thinking
good
of
idea.
like Mystic Paddleboard, like they do witches on paddle boards at Halloween. So you see all these witches coming down the river. So I think any sort of fun initiative people will be like, yeah, like let's get all our kayaks together and like tie up and go down the river. Like it just has to be fun as much as it is important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that idea. That's really fun. I feel like there are enough people with little canoes and kayaks in town, right? Where we could get
Oh,
like a
yeah.
group together.
Yeah. Kayaks are hard because you're low and you can only reach as far as you can. I mean, you can get close, I guess, but then you need somewhere to put the stuff because you don't want to put it like on your legs, you know. But we could have like
Have a
some
garbage
type of
canoe.
garbage canoe, right? Like float specifically and have trash, yeah. Something like that. I mean, it's still, water is gonna be darn cold in April.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
could do a
But again, if you're in a canoe, you don't really get wet. Kayak,
and if people have
yeah,
dry suits.
yeah. I mean, for the hardcores. I mean, that could be a
That's
summer thing
fun.
that we do too. It doesn't have to happen on Earth Day.
Right.
That's true. That's true. I'll do it in the summer.
And I bet you're not the only one who would rather do it in the summer.
Hey, with global warming, you never know. Maybe April 22nd is going to be 85 and sunny.
I mean, truly.
Hey, I did the polar plunge one year.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That is something I would not sign up for. Yikes. What was the weather when you did it?
Oh, it was like 20 degrees out. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Let's not add that as an initiative.
Did you get hypothermia?
No, I mean, I did not swim around. I literally plunged and ran out.
Oh my God. Oh my God, it sounds so cold. I love that idea though. That's really cool.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. And that's something we can totally do over the summer. And I think we can get some energy up for it and have people just come bring their boats. We actually ended up, there's a spot you can pull off and start above Boombridge in Rhode Island, like outside of Westerly, whatever it is. And then so we came down from there just to make it a little longer. So I don't know exactly what the parking is like right at the bridge, but I know they made some spots at least.
Oh, cool.
When you take canoes, when you take a trip like that, you have to have cars at either spot. You have to sort of organize it in such a way that you can get everyone back to where they started again.
Right.
But we can work out some logistics. That sounds fun.
I'll Google some Earth Day ideas.
Is for those kind of things, like I'm sure can you get people that do like just the shuttle, like volunteer, like somebody who is just a runner?
Yeah, if it's a large group of people, then you just have someone who's going to shuttle people back up, as opposed to like one group where you have to like do the 2-car things. So all that, just to say that it needs to be organized a little bit, but
Right,
it's all
okay.
doable. Yeah, I love it. It's great.
Cool.
I've got a
Awesome.
canoe and 2 kayaks and a couple paddle boards, and we can
Do you
Load 'em up.
volunteer your garbage canoe?
definitely. Oh yeah, it's an old like 1970 something Grumman aluminum canoe. The thing is like a tank.
Very cool. Alrighty. Anything else?
That's good. It was good to end on a little positive note there. It was nice. World's gonna be okay.
So
Motion to adjourn.
yeah,
Okay.
motion adjourned. I'm hoping there's dinner in my future.
Good.
Alrighty, have a good night, everybody.
All right.
Or
Bye, guys.
You too.
all of
Thanks so
you.
much.
Bye.
Bye.